I took the job out of desperation. Bills were piling up and I needed a way to make ends meet. The job market was tough and I was willing to take anything that came my way. College tuition doesn't pay itself. Between classes and studying, I barely had time to sleep, let alone work a full-time job, but I had no choice. I needed the money to stay in school and keep my dreams alive. Night Stalker, the ad read. Quiet grocery store, good pay. Sounded perfect. I imagined peaceful nights, organizing shelves, and maybe even getting some studying done during breaks. It seemed like the ideal solution. Little did I know, quiet meant something entirely different at Blackwood Grocery. The silence was oppressive, almost tangible, and it felt like the store itself was watching me. The moment I stepped inside, a chill ran down my spine. The air was heavy, and the dim lighting only added to the eerie atmosphere. It was nothing like I had imagined. The air was thick with the smell of stale bread and something faintly metallic. It was a scent that clung to the back of my throat, making it hard to breathe. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Overhead, fluorescent lights flickered, casting long, dancing shadows. The shadows seemed to move on their own, creating an unsettling dance that played tricks on my eyes. My first night, Mr. Jenkins, the manager, showed me around. He was an older man with a stern expression, and his presence did little to ease my nerves. "Just call me Jenkins," he'd said, his voice raspy, like an old engine struggling to start. His eyes held a glint of something I couldn't quite place. Was it fear or just weariness? He handed me a worn VHS tape. Training. He didn't elaborate. The tape felt heavy in my hand and I couldn't help but wonder what kind of training required such an outdated format. Just a knowing look and a grunt before he disappeared into his office, leaving me alone with the unsettling silence and a single flickering bulb above my head. The silence was deafening, and the flickering light only added to my growing unease. I loaded the tape into the dusty player behind the counter. The machine whirred to life and I felt a strange sense of anticipation mixed with dread. The screen flickered to life, revealing grainy footage of a deserted grocery store, eerily similar to Blackwood Grocery. The footage was old, and the store looked almost identical to how it did now, as if time had stood still. A voice, flat and emotionless, droned from the speakers. "Welcome to Blackwood Grocery. Here are your training guidelines." The screen flickered, and the grainy footage revealed an old VHS training tape. It looked like something out of the '80s, complete with washed-out colors and a slightly warped audio track. What followed wasn't your typical employee handbook. This was different. The guidelines were presented in a way that felt more like a warning than a set of instructions. The rules were simple, yet bizarre. Each one seemed to hint at something sinister lurking just beneath the surface of this seemingly ordinary grocery store. Rule number 1. Ignore black-eyed children. Do not engage. Do not let them in. The image of children with unnaturally dark eyes flashed on the screen, sending a chill down my spine. Rule number 2. Avoid aisle 4. Do not look down it. Do not enter. The camera panned to a dimly lit aisle, its shadows seeming to move on their own. Rule number 3. Do not look at the faceless man. Avert your gaze. Do not acknowledge him. A faceless figure appeared, its presence both unsettling and inexplicable. Rule number 4. The melting man smokes. Offer him a cigarette. The silhouette of a man, partially melting, smoking in the shadows, was both eerie and surreal. Rule number 5. Make coffee before your shift ends. Leave it by the back door. No explanations, just rules. The tape ended abruptly. Static filled the screen, leaving me with more questions than answers. My heart pounded in my chest. The eerie nature of the tape had left me feeling unsettled and anxious. What had I gotten myself into? The rules seemed more like a list of supernatural threats than actual guidelines for a job. I tried to shake off the unease, convincing myself that it was just an elaborate prank. Maybe the other employees were trying to scare the new guy. Maybe it was a prank. A joke by the other employees. I hoped, but the more I thought about it, the more the fear gnawed at me. But deep down, a primal fear whispered a different story. Something about the tape felt too real, too specific. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that the rules were more than just a joke. They were a warning. The first few nights were uneventful, just the quiet hum of refrigerators and the distant creak of settling metal. Then, one night, I heard it. A scratching at the front entrance, soft, insistent. I peered through the glass doors. 2 children stood there, faces obscured by the shadows. "Let us in," they whispered, their voices unnaturally high. That's when I saw them, their eyes. They were completely black, like 2 bottomless pits. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The training tape. Rule number 1. Ignore the black-eyed children. I backed away slowly, my gaze never leaving their shadowy figures. They continued to scratch, their whispers turning into angry hisses. Finally, they vanished. I stood there, shaken to my core, the silence now deafening. Days turned into weeks, each night more unnerving than the last. One night, while stocking shelves, I stumbled upon an unlocked locker in the employee break room. Curiosity got the better of me and I cautiously opened it. Inside, a single notebook lay open, filled with frantic scribblings. They watched from the aisles, one entry read, another, the faceless man haunts my dreams, and then, a chilling illustration of a creature with melting skin, its eyes filled with unspeakable hunger. Beneath the notebook lay a large leather-bound book. Its title sent shivers down my spine, The Bestiary of Blackwood. My hands trembled as I reached for it, but a sudden crash from the back room startled me. I slammed the locker shut and spun around, my heart racing. The back room door swung open, revealing nothing but darkness. Whatever lurked in the shadows of Blackwood Grocery was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak, every rustle of packaging sent chills down my spine. One night, while collecting shopping carts from the parking lot, I saw him. A tall figure stood at the back of the store, shrouded in shadows. I couldn't make out any features, just the vague outline of a man. He moved with an unnatural fluidity, gliding rather than walking. I knew instinctively that this was the faceless man from the training tape. Rule number 3, do not look at him. I averted my gaze and hurried back inside, my heart pounding in my ears. The faceless man was real, and he was watching. The rules of Blackwood Grocery were becoming impossible to ignore. They were etched into my mind, a constant reminder of the strange and eerie occurrences that plagued this place. They were more than just strange guidelines, they were warnings. Warnings that hinted at the dark secrets lurking within the aisles and shelves. One particularly slow night, a man approached the counter. His movements were slow and deliberate, as if he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. His skin appeared to be melting, dripping onto the floor like wax. It was a sight that sent shivers down my spine, a grotesque display of something not quite human. He coughed, a rattling sound that echoed through the empty store. The sound was unnerving, like the final breaths of a dying man. "Cigarettes," he rasped, his voice like gravel on pavement. It was a simple request, but the way he said it made my blood run cold. I remembered rule number 4. Never deny a request from a customer, no matter how strange or unsettling it may be. I fumbled for a pack of cigarettes, my hands shaking. The fear was palpable, a tangible force that made my fingers clumsy and uncoordinated. As I placed them on the counter, our fingers brushed. His touch was icy, sending a jolt of cold through my body. His skin felt unnaturally cold, like touching a corpse. It was a sensation that made my skin crawl, a reminder of the unnatural nature of this place. He took the cigarettes, his single visible eye burning into mine. There was something in that gaze, something that spoke of pain and suffering beyond comprehension. "Thank you," he rasped, a grotesque smile spreading across his melting face. It was a smile that held no warmth, only a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurked in the shadows. He shuffled away, leaving a trail of viscous goo on the floor. Each step he took left a mark, a reminder of his unnatural presence. I fought the urge to vomit. The stench, the sight, the entire experience was overwhelming, a sensory assault that left me reeling. The creatures of Blackwood Grocery were becoming bolder, their presence more pronounced. It was as if they were testing the boundaries, seeing how far they could push before breaking through. I was trapped in a nightmare, a waking nightmare that I couldn't escape, no matter how much I wanted to. The rules were my only guide, my only hope of surviving the horrors of Blackwood Grocery. The announcement echoed through the store, a voice distorted and amplified. "Clean up on aisle 4, clean up on aisle 4, aisle 4, the forbidden aisle, the one I was supposed to avoid at all costs." There was no aisle 4 in Blackwood Grocery, yet the announcement persisted, each repetition sending a fresh wave of dread through me. I felt an irresistible pull towards the back of the store, a force I couldn't explain. My feet moved independently, guiding me through the darkened aisles. The air grew colder, the smell of decay intensified. I reached the back of the store, where aisle 4 should have been, and then I saw it.
Breaking news.
A shimmering portal pulsating with an eerie green light stood before me. I could hear whispers emanating from within, beckoning me closer. This was it, the source of Blackwood Grocery's darkness. Rule number 2 screamed in my mind, but it was too late. The pull was overwhelming. I took a step toward the portal. Suddenly the lights flickered violently, plunging the store into darkness. I stumbled back, disoriented. When the lights finally stabilized, the portal was gone. I was left standing alone, surrounded by the familiar, unsettling silence of Blackwood Grocery. Had I imagined it? Or had I narrowly escaped something far worse? I continued to work at Blackwood Grocery. I had no choice. The job, the creatures, the rules, they were all a part of me now. I learned to coexist with the entities that haunted the aisles. I avoided their gaze, followed their bizarre requests, and never ever questioned their existence. I even developed a strange camaraderie with the entity that controlled the intercom. He, or it, seemed to enjoy playing mind games with me, announcing non-existent spills and requesting items that didn't exist. We were both trapped in Blackwood Grocery, bound by forces beyond our understanding. The job paid well, but the price was far greater. It was a price I was willing to pay, as long as it meant keeping the darkness at bay, at least for one more night.